Why are you so afraid? Why are you so afraid? When I was a kid, I was afraid of the Toenail Monster. Toenail Monster, it is a real thing. I can tell you it's a real thing. I was so afraid that this Toenail Monster would come into my bedroom and steal my toes, or not my toes, my toenails, while I was asleep. I would actually sleep like this, and then periodically, imagine waking up, remind yourself to wake up. This is real. Just so at least one of my feet had toenails on it. I'd sleep like that. For a kid of 18, that's really terrifying. That's horrifying. Sad thing is, I still have issues with my toes, my toenails. I hate my toenails. I hate toenail clippers. My kids will tell you, my wife will tell you, that the toenail clippers are a torture instrument for me. I can swim with sharks, I can go hike and try to find bears, but you put a pair of toenail clippers into my wife when she's mad, I am running and locking the door. I'm out of the house. Of course, I'm telling the truth, but of course there are other things that I'm more fearful of that are more logical and not so crazy. What do you fear? What do you fear? Not having enough money to pay the bills or put food on the table can be a real fear. What about relationships? Afraid of relationships. Will I ever fall in love? Will I stay together? Will I ever see that person who is gone? Do you fear your shortcomings? Or that someone else might find out your shortcomings? Those are real fears. We have a lot of fears. Fears will drain you. They'll suck you dry. They'll zap your joy, and they steal your contentment. Think about what you're most afraid of. How do you feel? Now imagine that you could just let that go. That which you're most afraid of, you can just let go. Instead of living in fear, you live on faith. What would happen if faith, instead of fear, became your default mechanism to facing stressful times? The answer to how afraid you are is linked with how much faith you have. Faith and fear are linked. When you have more faith, you have less fear. I'm not saying that you won't have fear. And I'm not saying that if you do have fear, you just must not have enough faith. I'm not saying that. I am saying that instead of being paralyzed by fear, you have freedom. You are freed by faith. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, you can be freed by faith. Let's look at this. Matthew chapter 8, if you have a Bible in front of you, the Pew Bibles have kind of got mixed up from yesterday, so hopefully you have one in front of you. Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 23. This is a time when Jesus, he's very, very busy in his ministry. And he's got these crowds following him, and you just kind of picture nowhere Jesus goes does he have peace. He's just always got people around him. And his disciples, they decide to go, Jesus and the disciples go on a boat ride. And these are fishermen. So for them, this is kind of like vacation. They get to get away from the crowd, get on a boat, cross the sea. 23. Then he got on the boat, and his disciples followed him. Without warning, a furious storm came up on the lake so that the waves were sweeping over the boat. Just imagine this. They thought they were on vacation and things just got worse. They thought this is going to be a nice boat ride. Things got worse. Have you ever been on the water when it really started kicking up? It gets scary. I've crossed the Alligator River on a 12-foot kayak, and the fishing boats and the crab boats would just come by, not even paying any attention to me. My boat was just flipping upside, all over the place. It was a lot of fun, but it was also very scary. This is something much, much bigger than what I went through. This is a storm, and these seasoned fishermen were fearful for their life. This was not this is a roller coaster. This is, I am fearful for my life. Storm here is translated a lot of times as tempest. Tempest basically means storm, but I like the word tempest because it means it was almost like the whole earth was quaking. That's how violent things were on the sea. If you have a tempest in you, it means you're shaken to the core. It riles you up. That's the idea here. They were in a tempest. We have tempests in life. Sometimes things are going on. Things are going fine. And all of a sudden, without warning, tempest. Just floating along in your life, and all of a sudden something happens and you're shaken to the core. We have tempest in our lives. Phone rings and they want you to come in for more testing. A young teen dies in a car accident. A friend of mine found a letter from her husband. I'm going fishing. I won't be back. Shaken to the core. But I want you to notice something. All this happened while they were following Jesus. This storm came up on the sea while they were following Jesus. They were obedient and they were trying to do right in the boat with Jesus, and things happened. This is part of the life of a Christian. We think that when we become a Christian and we try to do things right, that bad things won't happen to us. Or if bad things do happen to us, it must be God being angry at us. We have this mentality. The Bible does not say that a storm came about and they immediately knew God was angry. We have to kind of stop this thinking. Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble. In this world, you will have trouble. Being with Jesus does not mean you will not have a storm, but it does mean that you don't have to be afraid of the storm ever again. He wants us to know that God is able and God is with us. That changes your paralyzing fear into faith. Psalms 23, this is everybody knows this verse. Psalms 23 or 24. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because
thou art with me.
Thou art with me. Your fear, your anxiety, you don't have them. You're in a bad place, you're in a tempest, but you don't have them because God is with you. Being a Christian does not mean you won't face storms, but it does mean that He'll be there with you to weather the storm. Verse 24. Without warning, a furious storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. Imagine that. You were afraid for your life, and Jesus, what is He doing? He's just sleeping. 25. The disciples went to wake Him up, and they said, Lord, save us. We're going to drown. Mark says that the disciples came to Him, and he has a little bit different interpretation. He said, why don't you care if we're going to drown? They really thought this was the end. They were puzzled by Jesus. That's what fear does to us. It makes us question whether God really cares. When we have fears, when we have a tempest in our life, sometimes we question whether God really cares. Fear can take away your faith. It takes your focus away from God. But it's at this time, when things were falling apart, that's when God calmed the storm. 26. Jesus replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up, rebuked the wind and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed, and they asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Jesus asked the question, why were they afraid? I don't think the disciples got to even give an answer before Jesus got up and calmed the storm. I think what Jesus was looking for was not so much them to answer, but to teach them a lesson. They needed to learn that God was bigger than the tempest. God was bigger than the storm. And he's bigger than the tempest in your life, the problems that come across in your life. With God, even the biggest storm can be calmed. These same disciples learned that. These same disciples later became the apostles. Here they had fear. But later, they would face paralyzing fear with a fearless faith. They would face situations where their life was in danger. That's paralyzing fear. That's being afraid. But they would face it with fearless faith. That's what it means to grow as a Christian, as a disciple. They became better disciples. We all start out as Christians, and we have problems with our fears. We sometimes even question, why is God doing this to us? We have those questions. But a better disciple knows God is able and God is with us. Knowing that God is able to calm the storm, and if he does not calm the storm, a Christian knows that he will calm you. He might not calm the storm that you're in. The tempest might still be there, but he can calm you. All right, final thought. Faith is only as strong as the object you put your faith in. Faith is only as strong as the object you put your faith in. It's kind of like this. We're all on a plane, and all of a sudden the plane has trouble and it's going down. The pilot dies. That's the issue. The pilot dies. And you all turn to me and you ask me to fly the plane. You say, "We know you can do it. We know you can save it. We have faith in you." Now, what is that called?
Blind faith.
It's called foolishness. You think I can fly a plane? No. I would probably have fun and do loops all the way down. No. But one of the passengers, he's a pilot. He's a retired pilot. He has done many emergency landings. He teaches pilots. As a matter of fact, he designed that plane. Now that's the person you put your faith into. God is the designer of everything. He knows you. He knows your storms, and he's able to calm your storms. That's who you put your faith in. With God as your pilot, there is a lot to think about, but there is nothing to worry about. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much, and help us to understand and feel your presence during those storms. It gets really hard. Sometimes the storms in life, they just overpower our thoughts, and it's hard to think of you. But help us to turn to you in everything that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.